Ability, but I had to embrace Roberta first. So, embracing accountability. I know that's not a very sexy topic, right? Like, oh, accountability, yay, yes, let's talk about accountability. So exciting, so juicy. Yeah, not. I know. But here we are, and I would love to be able to say, I am an expert on accountability, and I'd like to share with you all how fantastic I am at it. And that's not what we're going to do today. I am a student of learning accountability, what that means. And one of the best ways to get good at something is to start teaching. Because as soon as you start teaching about what you're learning, three things happen. The ego gets engaged, because you don't want to look like an idiot when you're talking about what you're learning, so you study a little bit harder if you know you're going to talk about it. There's a whole book written about this, actually called The Eighth Habit by, what was the guy, How to Win Friends and Influence People? Why can't I call his name now? Franklin Covey, that's right. Franklin Covey, who wrote How to Win Friends and Influence People and the 7 Habits of Highly Effective People, wrote The Eighth Habit. And the 8th habit is you will find your voice and become good at anything by teaching it, even as you're learning it. And they said even in the book, after you read 2 chapters, go teach the 2 chapters to someone. Go explain it to someone, because your ego will not allow you to be slackish, if you will. So, yeah, so that's the spirit of tonight's talk. I'm studying it and I'm sharing with you what I'm learning. So embracing accountability, it's good to start with some definitions. So when we think about accountability, how would you define that? Anybody? When you hear the word accountability, what do you think?
Taking responsibility for your own actions or reality.
Taking responsibility for your own actions or reality. I love that. I love that. What else? What is accountability? That's a solid definition right there. All right.
It's very dictionary-ish, sorry.
Well, look, that's actually from the dictionary. Taking responsibility. So y'all know she's kind of stole my presentation and looked at it. Didn't you, Jamie? Just teasing. It's exactly it. The definition from the dictionary, right, is taking responsibility for decisions and actions. Seems pretty straightforward, right? Okay. So if it says taking responsibility, well then how would you define responsibility? Because there's another word in there that we could explore. How do we define responsibility? Anybody? How do we define responsibility? If you're responsible for something, or you have to take responsibility for something, what does that mean?
Holding yourself accountable.
You're in charge, holding yourself accountable. So we just defined accountable, which is taking responsibility. Yeah, so what does responsibility mean? Like, I'm with you, it is, you're right. But then we have to explain to someone maybe who never heard the word before. We can't tell them that it's accountability because they don't know that word either. So someone who doesn't know either word.
You're in charge for your own actions. You are, yeah.
Okay. Okay, that works. So this is why we do definitions, because I was trying to come up with one and I had to go to the dictionary. I'm a native English speaker and I live in that dictionary because it helps me to understand really when we say something, what do we really mean? And words have a lot of power and vibration. And the words that we speak carry a lot of vibration. And when we want to elevate our vibration, we want to evolve. Choosing our words carefully is helpful. So this is how the dictionary defines it. Responsibility is a job it's 3 things. It's either a job or a duty. It is the ability to act independently and make decisions without authorization. It's also agency, meaning agency is another word that means you have the will and the capacity, the ability to do something without asking for permission. So, all of you had agency over getting dressed this morning. You had the ability to act independently and make the decision to get dressed without somebody authorizing that for you, right? And depending on which country you live in, getting dressed is a job or a duty, or else you will be arrested for indecent exposure, right? So I'm just making a funny analogy because it's going to get deeper. So you're laughing, but it's true, right? I'm just giving an example. All right, so we're talking about embracing accountability. So we know that accountability is taking responsibility for just exactly what Jamie said, for what we do and what we decide. Responsibility is a job or duty. It's our ability to make decisions and act independently without authorization. It's our agency and free will. Okay, well, let's keep going with the definitions. How would you define embrace or embracing? We're talking about embracing accountability. How would you define embracing? Embrace. Hugging?
Taking control, taking over.
Taking control, taking over? Okay.
Right?
So I gave Roberta an embrace on my way up. Did I take over and take control with that?
Hug.
Just hug. Okay, so hug or take it. I took a little tap.
You're bigger than me, yeah.
Oh, that's right.
Yeah.
That's true. I love it. So it is holding someone or something closely with affection, right? So that's one definition. But it's also accepting or supporting a belief, theory, or change willingly and enthusiastically. Like we embraced the new teaching, right? Enthusiastically. We embraced, you know, we embraced the concept of free will. We embraced the new procedures that the leader brought us, right? It is accepting or supporting a belief, theory, or change willingly and enthusiastically. You don't embrace something and you're like, guess we're gonna do that. Like that's not embracing, right? It's like, oh great, we get to do X, Y, Z. We embrace the idea of yoga on Saturdays. Yay, we get to do yoga on Saturdays. Yippee, that's willingly, enthusiastically, right? Closely, with affection, like excited, I can't wait for it, right? Right, so you with me now? So now we're talking about being like that with accountability. How are we gonna get there, right? Well, let's talk about why we should do it. What do y'all think are the benefits of accountability? Because I mean, there's no reason to do it if there's no benefits. I mean, let's face it, we're a benefit-oriented society. What's the first thing that we ask when someone tells us about something? What's in it for me, right? You cannot persuade someone to do something without telling them what's in it for them. It's the basics of persuasion. It's the basics of communication. If you are training or teaching something, if you don't tell people what's in it for them relatively quickly, we check out into things where we know what the benefit is. So let's not go any further without talking about benefits. Do you all think there's any benefits to accountability? What would you say? What would one of the benefits be? Learning. With you.
Maybe no regret about outcomes.
Say that again. 4 powerful words.
No regret about outcomes.
No regret about outcomes. I wish I had talked to you before I put this presentation together. I love that. That has got to be near the top of the list. So learning, no regret about outcomes. Accepting. Okay, say more about accepting.
Accepting maybe who you are truly and the mistakes that you make honestly. And being accountable, feeling really responsible and speaking about it.
So learning, no regret about outcomes, and then how would you summarize what you said? Okay, and what she said. All right, what else?
Compromise with yourself.
Compromise with yourself. Okay, what do you mean by that?
Like if you make it something, so you want to, resolve the problem or try to be better. So
Okay. I love it. All right, so empowerment is one of the first ones, right? Accepting responsibility, we gain control over our lives and actions, right? So empowerment. Improved relationships. Ever been in a relationship with someone who doesn't take accountability for their decisions or their actions? And I don't necessarily mean a romantic relationship. How about a boss, a coworker, a friend, a child, a parent, a sibling, right? Someone who doesn't, it's hard to be in a relationship with people like that. It's hard to be in community and in relationship with someone who doesn't do that, right? And when we take responsibility and take accountability and we embrace accountability, it also improves our relationships because it fosters trust and respect, right? It's hard to trust and respect someone who doesn't take accountability for what they do and what they say, right? Improved health. Let's talk about that. What if we took responsibility and embraced accountability with how much we ate, how much we slept, how much we exercised, how much we meditate, how much time we spend in sunshine, a lot of this is within our agency. We don't need to ask permission to go in the sun. We don't need to ask permission to eat more or less of certain types of foods. We don't need to ask permission to exercise. You don't need to belong to a gym. We don't, right? We don't need to ask permission to go in the sun, right? So if we take accountability, full accountability for our physical health, it will improve. Personal growth, I think that's probably how you would say that, right? So this is when we self-reflect and we think about the outcomes. What was it you said? No regret
About
outcomes. Right, right. So when we reflect, we learn from our mistakes. We can do continuous improvement because every outcome we know is something we've taken responsibility for. So if we take and accept accountability for the outcomes we have now, we can also accept and take responsibility for the next outcome that we want, even if it's different, so that we don't have to have regret about the outcome we're in now. Make sense? Enhanced problem solving. Think about that. We cannot solve a problem if we are blaming external factors for our problem. The minute we say that our problems are caused by someone else, our capacity to solve them is gone. Because we have free will, and so does the person to whom we have assigned responsibility for our problems. We cannot force them to choose a different behavior if someone else's behavior is contributing to a problem. We have a whole lot of choices, including how close we're choosing to be to that person, or how much of our lives, decisions we are assigning to that person. At the end of the day, our problems are not someone else's fault. And we can solve them a lot faster when we take accountability for them. That's why it's not fun or sexy. This ain't juicy, right? But somebody debate me. I mean, tell me if anyone disagrees with any of this. This is all evidence-based research. This is psychology research, and we have a therapist in the room who can tell me when I'm stumbling. So if I say anything wrong, tell me. I lean on you, Roberta.
Everything is very right.
Yeah. What else? This is not the only list. This can't possibly be the only list. Where else do we benefit when we take accountability besides empowerment, taking control of our lives, improved relationships, better health, personal growth, better problem solving?
Self-love.
Self-love. So say how can embracing accountability help us love ourselves? Say more about that.
I think that when we find the truth in ourselves, it helps us with understanding more of ourselves and loving ourselves and accepting ourselves.
Mm-hmm.
So once you accept that you've made this choice, whatever choice it is, it changes everything. It brings you to the realization.
Yeah, and that's the personal growth and the self-love. I love that. So if it's this good,
Personal growth, yeah, definitely.
and self-love. I think self-love is separate, but I think they're in the same
they
thing,
are.
right? So if it's this good, we got all these benefits. What stops us? Why don't we? Say what? Ego. Okay. Valid. What else? What stops us?
Fear.
Fear. Fear of what? Who said fear?
I did.
Okay, fear of what?
Fear of the situation, fear of rejection,
Okay.
fear of, rejection, really,
Okay.
probably.
That's a powerful fear, and that's valid. Both of those 100%. Fear, ego. What else? Oh, lack of awareness. So like lack of awareness of.
You've made or is about to make a mistake that you're not realizing or recognizing that you should be accountable.
Okay. Yeah, for sure. What else stops us? Long list of benefits to embracing accountability, but in general, we don't do it. In fact, the research says it's one of the most difficult things. It's one of the most difficult things is to take or admit responsibility for our mistakes or for what, where we have problems. Research says it's one of the most difficult things. Why is that? Besides ego and fear, which are two big reasons. There, but there's more. So facing reality is the first one. So some of that's ego, some of that's fear, but acknowledging mistakes can make us uncomfortable. Like we don't want to face reality. If the reality is that I'm responsible, then a whole lot of other consequences come from that. There's a whole new reality that we have to face. And let's face it, we're not that good at facing reality. We're not. It's not a skill set that is like installed in us from childhood. If our family unit was not structured around the concept of accountability and facing reality, we're probably not that good at it. And it's okay. This isn't where we start to like feel really bad because we're not good at it. There's all sorts of things we don't know. I mean, we're here in a school. This is a spiritual school. This one of the functions of this center is for us to learn things together. So it's okay that we're in a school and we don't know everything there is to know. Like, let's be okay with that. Let's normalize like learning. It's okay, right? Let's normalize it. Vulnerability. So this is where, well, if I, yeah, that's fear, but it's also, it requires honesty. And we can tell people all day that we don't lie. We lie to ourselves all the time. In fact, the only thing that someone can say and you know for sure that they're telling the truth is when they admit they lie. That's the only time you can be 100% sure someone's telling the truth, period. Right? So let's admit that we lie to ourselves. Somebody says, how you doing? You feel like trash. You're like, I'm fine, how are you?
Yeah.
I mean, it starts there. We don't say, struggling a little bit. Thanks for asking. How are you? We haven't even normalized being honest about how we feel. Why we think people don't care. All of the things. We don't want to face reality. We don't want to be vulnerable. I mean, the list goes on, right? Overcoming ego, right? And along with ego is what? Letting go of pride and defensiveness and the need to be right. We are addicted to the need to being right. Yonada gave a really powerful lecture on that you can look up on the YouTube. Just Google BSS and the need to be right. Powerful lecture, so I don't need to redo that lecture. Very great one. Effort. It takes effort. We're a microwave society. We want everything and press the timer for 3 minutes, right? We want everything in a swipe and a scroll. We want everything at a tap. We want everything fast, right? We want everything quickly. And anything that takes effort and time, we instantly devalue it. We're like, oh, God. We start eye rolling, sighing. I mean, right? This is what we do. I mean, I'll admit it. Y'all don't got to admit it. I'll embrace responsibility for that one. It takes effort. We are lazy. We don't have to be lazy. We have the capacity to produce enough energy to do this and so much more because we have access to infinite, intelligent energy inside of us. Infinite, a bottomless resource of energy. And we can supplement it through all of the methods we've learned in all of the teachings of any Spiritist center. What we learn from the spirits, we can get energy from the sun, energy from plants, energy from the wind, much less energy from healthy foods and enough sleep and yoga here on Saturdays and meditation on Tuesday. Right? There's energy sources. But it takes effort. What else? What else is stopping us besides fear, ego, reality, vulnerability, need to be right, effort? What else? This is just a short list. But let's talk about it. We're family today. I think effort is probably the top one on my list. It's like, oh my God, something else I have to do? I got so many things. I'm so busy. I have so many things. Come on, right? Did anybody else tell themselves that lie? And I sit up and believe it like it's true. But if I really want to do something, if I really want to go buy a pair of shoes, I don't know if y'all saw the shoes Roberta's wearing. They are so cute. If I could figure out where to buy those, I would buy those tomorrow. I would make sure, I would put in all the effort to go buy a nice pair of shoes. I would be disciplined and single-minded in my effort to go buy a pair of shoes I really like. If they were in my size and I could afford it, I would go buy those shoes. But don't you have that one or two things no matter what you're going to do it? Every day you got one or two things you're going to do. We just don't prioritize it. That's all. But if we don't, what do you think's going to happen? So we know that there's benefits. We know what's stopping us. But what is the result of doing nothing? Because remember, doing nothing is a choice. Doing nothing is an action, it's a decision, and it has outcomes. What happens when we do nothing? What do y'all think?
Frustration.
Frustration, for sure. So frustrated with what? What are we frustrated with when we don't take accountability?
I didn't take charge for my things I do.
Mm-hmm. Mm-hmm. So frustration with the wreckage that not taking accountability produces. All right, what else? What happens when we do nothing? Because I don't care what anybody says, doing nothing is a decision and a choice. It's an action. What happens when we do nothing?
We stop learning, we stop growing.
Stop learning, stop growing.
Feel stuck,
Mm-hmm.
right?
Mm-hmm. Yeah. So, first one is perpetual victimhood. If we don't take responsibility, who does? Somebody does. Oh, trust me, we all have assigned someone to take responsibility for the problems in our lives.
Yeah.
It's just not us. But if somebody else is responsible for what's happening in our lives and it's not us, what does that make us? A victim. Victim. Period. Now, granted, there are some cases where our free will has been compromised. I'm not talking about those cases, all right? We know that there are extreme situations where your free will is compromised, right? We're not talking about that. We're not talking about that, so let's just park that to the side. We're talking about all the things where we have agency, can make decisions without authorization, okay? Let's just keep because there's a pocket of things that we don't want to bring into the talk tonight. Let's just keep it simple. Perpetual victimhood. Nobody wants to hear that. How'd you like to walk around with a big sign on your forehead that says perpetual victim? What does that do for the ego? I'm afraid of that more than I'm afraid of actually, talk about fear and ego like stopping us, but I'm more afraid of that. My ego doesn't want perpetual victim on my forehead. How about just victim? No, I don't want that. I don't want that. I'm not even going to say it out loud. Say it ain't so. Tell me it's not true. If I'm not responsible, I shouldn't have to do anything. I didn't create this problem. I shouldn't have to solve it. Ouch. You see, accepting blame and responsibility is difficult for most normal people, most typical people, let's not say normal, for most neurotypical people, right? Narcissist disorder it's a mental disorder. But it's almost impossible for a narcissist, for someone with that disorder, to take responsibility for anything. It's like almost impossible, right? Because, narcissists live in this fantasy world where they're perfect and superior to others. So admitting to any accountability whatsoever for any problems, it violates their own sense of self. Like it's like literally impossible. Anyone ever had a conversation with, been in relationship or in community with a narcissist? Anyone? 1, 2, okay, 3, 4, okay, 5. You ever heard them claim responsibility for something that they did? No, right? The classic thing is to do what? Make everyone else responsible, in general, the other person, and then make you feel crazy for not accepting it, also known as gaslighting, right? And we have a judgment about narcissists, right? If you've ever been in a relationship or conversation with one, it's difficult. It's difficult. It's difficult. Is that what we want for ourselves? Because the longer we refuse to embrace responsibility, these are the outcomes. Stalled growth, as you said, right? What else? And then we'll go into how we do this. But like we talked about what it is, what are the benefits, what stops us, what happens if we don't do anything, what else happens when we refuse to embrace accountability for our decisions and our actions. I'm not saying embrace accountability for other people's decisions and other people's actions, just ours. The decisions and actions that we did without authorization, without permission, without the need for permission, that we had agency over, decisions about our lives. Okay, so how do we do it? Here's how to do it. First, we have to do an inventory. Let's take a look at ourselves. Let's look, and where do we take the inventory, right? We look at all of the things in our life that we are unhappy with. Just write it down. Just start with an inventory. Then our next step is accepting, right? Acknowledge our mistakes and shortcomings and areas for improvement without judgment. And this is something that we are learning in our study, which is accepting the free will and decisions of others without judgment. We're included in that. It's accepting our decisions and outcomes without judgment. You know why? Because you can always do something different. If it's not something that fits into your image for yourself, your plan for your life, just make a new choice. Create a new outcome, right? Then we have to own, right? Take responsibility for those actions and the consequences. Because see, some of us could say, yeah, I did that. But we don't want to own what happened after we did it, right? We'll own our intent, but we don't want to own the impact, right? So we get to own that as well. Then apologize and make amends. We all struggle with this because, oops, if you apologize, that means you had to say you weren't right. I know, we want to be right. But it's actually not hard to say, you know what? I missed the mark. I wanted to do this. I ended up doing that. I'm sorry. I'm sorry for the harm I caused. I'll do better, right? I don't mean apologize by saying, oh, sorry you got offended, right? Apologize at someone else. No, we don't take ownership of other people's. That's what?
That's not acceptable.
It's not an apology.
No.
It's just not an apology, right? A real apology is when you own your behavior, you own the impact, you commit to do better, and that's done, right? And if it's appropriate, make amends. If you broke somebody's vase, replace it, right? You stained somebody's couch, clean it. Like, make amends. That's how you take ownership of your mistakes. Apologize and clean it up. And again, we don't want to do that's effort, might cost money, but if you made the mistake, when I make the mistake, it's my job. It's not your job to clean it up. It's my job. This is why it gets hard, right? And then, learn and grow. Because if we realize that drinking coffee sloppily on someone's couch causes a stain, and we apologize and take accountability and clean it up, don't drink coffee on their couch again, right? Drink your coffee in the kitchen. Right? I'm being silly, but you're creating outcomes that you don't like, make different choices. That's the learn and grow, right? This is how to take accountability. So where do we do it? Let's look at our own lives. Where are we dissatisfied? Are you dissatisfied with your health? Take ownership. Make different choices. You dissatisfied with what's happening in your bank account? Make different choices. Take ownership. And that may include leaving the job that you're in to go work somewhere else where the income you want to receive can be produced. That might mean learning a new skill. That might mean making changes, but you don't have to ask permission for that. You can learn any skill you want to, right? Not happy with your goals and your dreams? Make new ones. Nobody's producing those for you. You are. Not happy with your spiritual development? Make some new choices. Learn some new things, right? Like in your own life. This is just a short list, but these are usually the top 4, relationships and whatnot, right? This is usually where we have opportunities to take accountability. In relationships with others, you always start with where are you dissatisfied. That's accountability begins when your unhappiness starts. Because when we're unhappy, that's usually we say, I'm unhappy because she did something to me. You made me so mad. Nobody can make me anything. Somebody engaged in a series of behaviors And my response choice was angry, mad, unhappy, right? So it's always start with wherever you're, that's where accountability starts, where your unhappiness starts. Same place, right? Where are you dissatisfied? So you got conflicts with people? Where is the accountability? If you feel victimized by people, where's the accountability? If it's a situation where your free will is being compromised, then you leave that situation, right? There. Toxic relationships. Toxic relationships? Toxic relationships. I'm not going to say anything else. Toxic relationships have two parties at a minimum. You don't have to be one of them unless you want to. And if you continue, taking responsibility for it is the fastest way to go from unhappiness to happiness, right? Where else we can take responsibility and take accountability? Let's talk about relationship to humanity, relationship to self, relationship to others, relationship to humanity. So where are you dissatisfied with the world, right? Well, here's the thing. I can ask you, do you observe injustice? Almost all of us would say yes. But the part that we don't want to talk about, you know, can you actually take action on those injustices? Or are you benefiting from the injustice and don't want to take action because you're benefiting? I'm not going to answer that for you, but it's a question worth asking. Because sometimes we don't take action or accountability because we are benefiting from not taking accountability. And we have to get real about that. No one can tell us that for ourselves. That's a moment of silent, honest reflection where we choose temporarily to stop lying to ourselves and engage in some honest, open dialogue with ourselves. Are we benefiting from injustices that we observe? What about ignorance? I mean, does anyone here go a day in a life without observing ignorance somewhere? I observe ignorance on the daily. I mean, if there's anyone who doesn't observe ignorance every day, every day, there's days you don't see ignorance, raise your hand. Who never sees ignorance? We all see it daily, right? So,
I know about that.
You don't? Oh, so you have days where you don't observe ignorance? That's awesome.
Yeah, I don't even know what you mean by it.
Observing ignorance?
Yeah.
By someone who doesn't know something you think they should know. Think drivers on the road, think people in line, think people in a store who don't appear to be behaving with knowledge you think they should have. Think, you know, just in your daily life, or the circles that you move in. Right? If you have a job, people at your job. Huh? Say what?
Or even towards yourself.
Come on now. I was hoping we weren't going to go there, but do we observe our own ignorance, right? Is there things that we observe that we don't know,
Yeah.
right? If we acknowledge that we don't know everything, then there are things that we are ignorant of. Like there's a whole bunch of languages I'm ignorant of how to speak, right? Portuguese is one. I'm actually getting decent at Portuguese, but not great. I'm ignorant of how to be fluent, but I'm passable. In Brazil, I can get food, I can get a taxi, I can get a pousada, right? I can flirt a little, you know, the basics. All right. So here again, can you take action on the ignorance you observe in others or yourself? Or do you benefit from that ignorance? That's a tough one. That's a tough one. Because many times what stops us from growing is because we perceive that we are benefiting from staying stuck. And that's not something I tell anyone. That's something we decide for ourselves. And the only reason I know this, because I do it. Because I do it. That's how I know. That's how I know. So where else could we take, thinking about relationship to humanity, right? Besides injustices or ignorance. Those are just that's the low-hanging fruit. Because if you watch the news or if you move in public spaces, you're going to observe injustices and ignorance, right? So what else? What else happens in humanity that we are dissatisfied? That's the key. What's happening in the world that we are dissatisfied with? And it's okay if you don't want to call it out loud. But as you start to observe yourself your life, your relationships with people, what's happening in the world, wherever you are dissatisfied is an opportunity to take accountability. It's an opportunity. Does it mean that you caused the problem? It doesn't say if there's injustice that you have to own that you caused the injustice. But if you allow an injustice to occur, doing nothing is complicity. It's complicity. It's complicit. You now have some responsibility. If you watch an injustice take place and you do nothing, there is tacit approval of that injustice. I know no one wants to hear that, but it's true. All right, so let's talk about spiritual growth and then we'll wrap this up. So there's also some spiritual growth benefits, right? So there's this self-realization. I think Roberta also talked about that, right? This deeper self-awareness and the deeper capacity to embrace our ability to own our own outcomes takes us towards self-realization, which is the unification with our potential, right? We can access our potential by owning what already is, what we've already created. And if we own what we've already created, we create the possibility to create more and other things. That's the self-realization, the self-actualization, right? Transformation. You cannot change anything you do not think you own. And you certainly can't transform, right? Change is not the same thing as transformation. Change is the moving of states from one state to another. Transformation is one way of being to another way of being, right? Form versus being. Also, empathy and compassion. If we understand that what we do has impacts on other people, and we own that, and we see that what we do actually harms other people, and we start to own it, and we own the harm that we cause other people, that can help deepen the empathy and compassion that we already have. It's not that we don't have it, it's just that we don't have it there. So this helps us to expand that, right? And most importantly, our connection to our own inner divinity, because the creator of all that is created us as a means of knowing itself. We're all these individualized representations of the creator. The creator is the one who creates. We create stuff all the time. You know, it's like we assign like the creator of all this to creating like stars and people and planets and stuff. Well, it's the same process that we're creating the things in our lives, making a decision and then doing it. Thought, action, thought, decision, action. Same process. So there's this divine, infinite creator that we have inside of us that's creating all the things that we're doing. So there's this tremendous spiritual growth that happens. So to close this out, our summary is, if we embrace accountability, we can have empowerment, improved health, relationships, growth, problem solving, spiritual growth, all these great things. If we don't, perpetual victimhood, which is not a sign anyone wants to have, right? We don't want to be lazy. We don't want to start walking the path towards narcissism. We don't want to stall, right? So what will you do, right? The choice is up to you, because it's a choice and you don't need permission to make it, right? You have the ability to make that choice. So I will leave you with this, right? That embracing responsibility willingly and enthusiastically, not like, right? But wow, like I can get all these great things, right? And like with affection, like, wow, I love the fact that I have the capacity to create. Like that's kind of cool. I can create new stuff. Don't like the stuff I created before? Cool, I'll create new stuff. It really is a mindset, right? Because at the end of the day, we want divine love to embrace us willingly and enthusiastically, right? We want God to love us closely and with affection, right? So why not do that with ourselves and our capacity to create? And because like this, we can access and encounter the divine that is within us. So that's what I had for you, and my message to you is thank you. If you learn anything of value, share it with anyone else, because of this beautiful proverb. Wealth, if you use it, comes to an end, but learning, if you use it, increases. So thank you so much, everyone. Can you give an answer?